hopefully over the next hour or so, we'll give you a bit of an overview of the fund itself, plans for launch, some of the practicalities, how you can get involved, and have some time for questions and things from you afterwards. So hopefully everyone can see my slides and can hear me okay. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you could place yourself on mute, please, that would be very helpful because there's quite a lot of us on the call, and just to keep background noise down. If you're struggling with bandwidth, often I do on calls with lots of people, then you can turn your camera off, and that should help, but do feel free to keep that on. As I said, the session is being recorded, and we'll send a link afterwards along with the copy of the slides, and there'll be time for questions and answers at the end, and you can please do pop questions in the chat as we go along, and we can try and answer those as we go. And any questions we don't manage to answer today, hopefully they'll either be covered when we launch the fund, and if not, we'll come back and answer those afterwards when we circulate the slides round. So yeah, a big warm welcome. My name is Sam Evans. I'm Head of Natural Environment at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and I've been working with others you'll hear from today on the call to develop the Green Spaces Fund, and that's what we wanted to talk to you about today. So just in terms of the session and what we're going to do, I'll give you a bit of an introduction to the Green Spaces Fund, what we're aiming to do, and the purpose of it. Then we'll hear a bit about the practicalities of how the fund will work from Davine Wallace from the Greater Manchester Environment Fund. We'll then hear from Michaela Howell from Groundwork on how communities are going to be supported through Green Space Advisors to make the most of the fund. A couple of slides on communications, and then time for questions at the end. So that's just how today's session is going to run. So a bit of an introduction for you to the Green Spaces Fund. Hopefully you've all picked up at least some of what we're trying to do through the fund, either through the paper that went to the Combined Authority at the end of March, or through the information on the Greater Manchester Environment Fund website. But I'll go into a little bit more detail on that now. So just a bit of context, and that I'm sure all of you are aware of from the work that you're doing in your local authority and in partnership with us at the Combined Authority. Tackling the climate emergency and the biodiversity emergency that we declared at the end of March are key priorities for Greater Manchester, and a greener Greater Manchester was a key part of the refresh of the Greater Manchester strategy that the Mayor launched earlier this year. So a greener, fairer Greater Manchester for everyone. And that really is underpinned by the 5-year environment plan that we launched 3 years ago now, but is really about how we will deliver that greener element of the Greater Manchester strategy. So a greener, fairer, more prosperous Greater Manchester for all is really what's driving our work at the Combined Authority. So related to that, the Mayor's manifesto last year had numerous commitments on the environment, on decarbonisation, but also on the natural environment. And one of those, which has been driving our work on the Green Spaces Fund, is this commitment here to improve green spaces and open them up to more people. And the commitment to create a new Green Spaces Fund. And kind of 3 things I wanted to pull out here, really, that this is about cleaning up and improving and creating new green spaces. It's about giving grants to communities to be able to do that, so really community-led, and focusing at the end there on our poorest residents, so those most in need of greater amount and greater quality of accessible nature-rich green space. So it's about communities, it's about creating new or enhancing existing green space, and it's about tackling issues for our poorest residents in access to accessible quality green spaces. So we've been working as we've secured the budget for the Green Spaces Fund now prior to launch, to translate that into the aims of the fund. So this is really what we are looking to tackle through the fund. The first one of those is to benefit communities in greatest need of quality green space. So we are really going to be targeting those communities that are experiencing inequalities, and targeting communities where there is poor access to quality green space. So the fund will really be targeting those 2 particular aspects to really focus funding where it is most needed and can have the most benefit. The second aim relates to my first slide and tackling that climate and biodiversity emergency. So this is about creating and enhancing green spaces, and that can be to enhance biodiversity or to help us adapt to climate change. And those are the challenges that are set out by in the 5-year environment plan. And thirdly, speaks to that communities point. So we really want this to be community-led and community-driven. So we want to encourage and empower communities to get involved in nature and lead these projects that will help them better connect and people in their areas better connect with the natural environment. So those are the aims and the drivers of all of this work and of the Green Spaces Fund. In terms of, and Daveen shortly will come on to how we've translated that into the criteria and the application form and the support that we're providing to communities to help capitalise on those opportunities. In terms of how the Green Spaces Fund will be delivered, we're going to be delivering this through the already established Greater Manchester Environment Fund that we set up 2 years ago now to help us bring more funding and investment into the environment in Greater Manchester. So the Greater Manchester Environment Fund is already established. It's already acted as a platform for distributing grants, and we're working with you as local authorities and with other partners across the city region to capitalise on other opportunities we see as well. So more broadly, we're looking at corporate sponsorship. We're looking at the opportunities from biodiversity net gain and carbon offsetting, and we've been joining up to secure government funding as well. So the Green Spaces Fund will have its own identity, but it will sit within the governance and the umbrella of the already established Greater Manchester Environment Fund. And I just wanted to talk a bit about what we've already done through the Greater Manchester Environment Fund that the Green Spaces Fund obviously adds on to. We've already been delivering projects across all of your local authorities through the Green Recovery Challenge Fund on the left there, and hopefully a lot of you are aware of those projects that are coming to an end now. We've also been delivering funding through the Suez Community Fund, and we've also been secured funding from government to develop some of these other models to hopefully help us get more investment in the natural environment in Greater Manchester. So the Green Spaces Fund has its own will have its own identity, but sit within this broader activity that's going on with you and with all our other partners who work on this agenda across Greater Manchester. So just some highlights of what the Green Recovery Challenge Fund has delivered. That we'll obviously be building on through the Green Spaces Fund in terms of access, habitats improved, volunteers engaged, jobs created, just some of the headline figures from that, and some of the headlines from the Greater Manchester Recycle for Greater Manchester Community Fund that Suez Fund through the Greater Manchester Environment Fund. So we've really been through both of these, building that momentum, those partnerships, and proving that this model works in terms of getting funding to projects on the ground and building that experience of that. So that's hopefully a little bit of helpful context as to where the Green Spaces Fund sits alongside other initiatives that we're leading in Greater Manchester. I know many of you have got initiatives going on within your local authorities that hopefully this will complement and sit alongside as well. So that's hopefully a bit of an introduction for you. I'm now going to ask Daveen to introduce herself, and she's going to talk about how we've translated those aims of the fund into the practicalities of how we're going to deliver it over the next couple of years. So Daveen, I'll hand over to you now. If you just shout next slide, I will keep the slide deck moving along.
Great, thank you, Sam. So hello to everyone, I'm Daveen. I work for Lancashire Wildlife Trust, but I'm currently managing the Greater Manchester Environment Fund while we're recruiting, and we have recruited our grants manager who will be starting on the 20th of June. Next slide, please, Sam. There we go. So just to go through a few practicalities in terms of who is eligible, as well as the way we're going to be looking at assessing the applications. So to start with, just looking through the eligibility. These are the organisations that we are targeting. We're really focusing on those community-led organisations that really know the needs and the interests of the local community. But we do appreciate that there are some groups that might not have the status that where they can apply officially for funding. So we do accept that some groups may be asking for accountable bodies to essentially host their application. So we will be accepting applications from registered housing providers, local authorities and local parish councils to act on behalf of the group who would like to deliver their project. Sam, next slide, please. So we've looked very carefully at the aims that we'd like to deliver, and our application form has been set up to make sure that when groups are applying for the funding, they're answering the questions to make sure that we can see how they're demonstrating our aims. So within the aims, we've got various sub-objectives. Which again, it goes through teasing out that information from the groups as to why they feel their proposal really hits the aims that we're looking for. And we've obviously looked at how we would like to see groups demonstrating that they are achieving our objectives. So our applications will be scored against this criterion, and to the right you can see the scoring that we will give for each of those areas and how it will make up the end score. There will be a team of 6 assessment assessors who will be scoring the applications, and we'll be looking at the aggregate score across the applications and then looking at making decisions within that group. Once we've made those decisions or teased out any grey areas that there might be, that will then go towards our board for final approval. So I think we've got the timeline on the next slide, please, Sam. Oh, so there we go. So that in terms of our timelines, we're looking at launching the fund within the next, certainly within the week beginning the 7th of June, with a closing date of the 22nd of August, which will then give us enough time to sift through the applications and check that all applicants are eligible. And we'll then send the applications out to our assessors who will score the applications, bring everything back, and then that will get rubber stamped by our boards at the meeting at the end of September. Once that's been approved, then we can send award letters out and we can make initial payments. Just in terms of payments, we are looking at 50% of the grant upfront, with the final 50% at the end. If there's any problems with cash flows, then we can look at making other arrangements. But it's just to try and make this accessible to community groups that might not have much in terms of cash reserves. And then once we've sent out those awards letters, we'll be looking at the next round of applications. So we'll look at again another selection period to take to the board in January, and then we should have time for another 2 rounds after that. So there'll be 4 rounds in total. That might change depending on how things go, but the crucial thing is that projects will need to be completed by March 24 when the funds need to be spent. One of the things that the Mayor was keen to see was that this was a stepping stone, a building block for us to attract more funds into Greater Manchester for our natural environment. So we'll be using this opportunity to look at ways in which we can bring in more funding, whether it's more funding in terms of the projects that are being put forward, or it's potentially where the groups are really keen to look at developing new activity to build on what they deliver through the Green Spaces Fund. Likewise, if projects aren't successful through the Green Spaces Fund, then we will be encouraging those groups to look at alternative sources of funding. And we'll also be looking at ways in which there might be some corporates within Greater Manchester that are keen to try and demonstrate the impact that we can have by looking at ways in which we can essentially double the funds that we've got available now. So we're keen to be looking at ways in which we can grow this fund and make sure that we're doing more than what we're setting out to do, but also making sure that we can continue to deliver it beyond March 24. Okay. And then we're looking at opening on the 7th of June. So the rounds should happen on a 4-monthly basis, and there will be an application form. It will be available online, and there will be guidance notes and frequently asked questions that are available on our website. We will be running some workshops to help people to find out a bit more about the fund and to give people some guidance in terms of the application forms. But we're really trying to make sure that we're targeting those communities that really desperately need some high quality green space. So hopefully we'll be trying to target those particular communities when we're looking at promoting workshops and telling people about the funding. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Daveen. It's a really helpful summary of how this is going to work and what's going to be launched in a couple of weeks' time. And I think just to highlight particularly that point around the prioritisation of where this funding is needed most, where there is a lack of green spaces and quality green spaces, and where communities are suffering inequalities, and how and the heavy weighting that's going to be given to that, particularly in the first round. So building on that, I'll ask Michaela to introduce herself and talk through the support that we're going to be putting in place for those groups and communities, recognising that if we're targeting those communities, they are most likely to be the ones who perhaps don't have the existing structures, organisations, capacity to take advantage of the fund. So I'll hand over to Michaela to talk about the support that will be in place for them. Michaela.
Thanks, Sam. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Michaela Howell. I'm the Head of Communities at Groundwork Greater Manchester. And if you could just pop the slide up, Sam, please. I've only got one slide to share with you, really. It's just clarifying the role of the advisors that we have. So you can see there on the left-hand side, there are 5 different environmental charities, local environmental charities, that have come together to offer this service. And it's a really rich partnership. So you can see from RHS and Horticulture, so the City and Gardening, Groundwork and its Urban Green Space, City of Trees and Trees, funnily enough, and Lancs Wildlife Trust and Nature Recovery. We've all got different specialisms, but we've all collaborated previously and are all really excited about trying to offer this as a joint cross-organisation team of advisors. So each one of us employs a full-time fund advisor, and they're experienced community workers who know the patches and know the specialisms that the organisations bring with them. And we're hoping that by bringing that team together, we not only can offer such a wide ranging support package for the community groups, but actually sharing the expertise in and amongst ourselves as 5 organisations is going to be really interesting, and we're quite excited about that. So the fund advisors their role is to be that critical friend. So they will be hand-holding through the entire process, but they'll also be challenging. And you've heard the message, I think, loud and strong, that this fund is really the latest opportunity we have to effectively target those communities that we know need this the most. So they will be challenging groups on, is this the right fund for you? Is that idea a right fit? Shall we have a look at that idea and do a little bit more on that? But also helping them with other funding opportunities, because they're knowledgeable about GM, but they're also working in the sector that they do, are knowledgeable about funding sources as well. So they'll support and challenge from initial idea right the way through to application and beyond, through delivery, because that's often a tricky time setting up. Actually, oh, now we've got the money, now we have to blooming do it, and hand-holding through that kind of process as well. And as Daveen mentioned, there's a focus here on what happens at the end, as there often is, but it's often quite tokenistic. How will you maintain your project? With the advisors on hand, we're hopeful that that sustainability can be really supported from the beginning, from conversations from the beginning, as well as helping them perhaps lever in more funding to continue, or think about the capacity in their communities so that it does continue. And the other relationships that they might need to develop along the way to ensure a successful project. I will labour it. This is the advisors will be targeting their work. So there'll be lots of organisations, I have no doubt, that are applying that won't want or need this kind of support. But there'll be a lot that do, and there'll be a lot that don't come across the fund that we have to go and seek out. And working with yourselves and others who are really well connected on the ground, we hope to do just that. And so we'll be offering all kinds of other opportunities just to find out about the fund and to see if it's for you, and see what support we can lever in from elsewhere as well to support people to think, yeah, actually, this might be for me and for what we want to do in our place. I've talked about the specialism, so I won't labour the point. I'm sure many of you have worked with many of us previously on various things, but just to say that each of the enablers will bring that specialism from their own organisation, but they'll also have a connection to different local authorities areas. So you as authorities will have a named contact for the fund. That doesn't mean to say that that's the advisor who'll be doing all the work in your area, because they'll bring in the most appropriate advisor to support the group, depending on what kind of project it is that they want to do. So the 5 enablers will meet together every 2 weeks and look at what inquiries have been made and who's best placed to pick that up. But for you as authorities who need to contact to find out more or just make connections with people, you'll have a named person to go to. And we will, I mean, it's quite a challenge for us, I think, working across the 5 to find a way of doing this truly collaboratively, but we're up for it. And the whole thing about making sure that we provide a really coherent service to you and to the community groups is really important to us. So we're investigating how we best share that case management, so that if somebody's off for whatever reason, somebody else is picking that up and at least will be contactable and know what's going on and what the latest position is. And so we'll try and that's for us. I mean, we do this thing with community groups and funding support and all the time, all 5 of the organisations, but it's really exciting for us to do this collaboratively, and we hope that we get that relationship with your lead contacts as well, so that it becomes more than the sum of its parts. Thanks, Sam. I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Michaela. That's great, and yeah, it's great to have the 5 of you organisations working with us on this. Given all the work you're already doing in this area. So thank you. OK, before we come on to questions, just a little bit around communications. So, and Michaela's already talked about that relationship and point of contact you'll have with the Green Space advisors. We will provide you all, and this is to be shared with your communications team, and we'll do that through our communications team at the CA as well. We'll provide you with a pack to help you promote the Green Spaces Fund amongst those communities that we've talked about, and that will include an overview of the fund, obviously, and key messages that you can use to brief politicians in your area, a announcement story that you can use in newsletters or on your website. There'll be social media posts and graphics for you to use, and there'll be kind of printable one-page flyers that that can be used as well to engage groups and individuals. So hopefully that's a good package of materials that can be readily used to help you promote the fund within and your colleagues promote it within your area. If there are other things that you would want or need, we do have communications resource working on the project. So the contact details are here for Tom Davis at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So if there's other things as this progresses that you think you need or want, then there is an open door there through Tom to ask for that or for any further support or guidance or information. So that was just a little bit on communications. I think now we've made sure we've kept the presentations relatively brief to give time for questions and answers. Before that, I guess just as a reflection, I think we're obviously all really excited about the opportunity that the fund has to really make a difference with those communities where this support would have the most impact and where it's most needed. And you've heard from Davina and Michaela about their involvement and how we're all coming together to work on this. I think just in terms of thinking about you as local authorities, your roles in supporting this, I think there's obviously raising that awareness of the fund and deciding in what capacity you may want to work with groups to apply for the funding, if that's through work that you're already doing and engaging with certain groups in the community. There's that aspect, of course, of promoting the fund with key audiences and identifying community groups and other networks. So I think we'd really welcome your support in doing that, and that's been really helpful. For example, through the Recycle for Greater Manchester Community Fund, getting that message out there through your networks has really helped on that. And I think then probably the third one we're thinking is this is going to be an iterative process over the next couple of years, and we will probably learn a lot from the first round. So I think having your feedback today and any thoughts today, but also in an ongoing way, really providing us feedback as the fund develops to how we can improve it for rounds 2, 3, and 4, how we can do even more and target the right communities as we progress and develop the fund. So you may have other ideas and thoughts about how you might get involved and support this, but those were just a few of the areas that I think we thought and would welcome your support on.